Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Miles and I like to talk about books, and if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate you. So today I am celebrating 1,000 subscribers. I am joining you from out here in my garden. If you hear some cars passing by, I'm gonna try to edit it, and if it's too loud, stop talking and skip it, but hopefully the bugs aren't bugging you too much. I think it's a vibe out here. It's very hot, but we're in the last few weeks of summer and I wanted to film out here again because it seemed like y'all enjoyed it last time, so here I am. But yeah, as I said, I recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which is insane. I never really thought that was going to happen, and I am just so happy about it. So thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. I never thought my channel would get to this, and so now it is my 50th video and I'm celebrating 1,000 subscribers, which is awesome. So thank you so much, whether you've been here from the very beginning or you just recently joined. I really appreciate you. This is crazy. I know I said it, but I never thought this would happen when I made my little YouTube channel like 3 years ago now, and I didn't know it would turn out like this. So thank you guys so much for all of the love and support along the way. I appreciate it more than I can describe. Before we get too far into things, I do want to mention, as I have in my last few videos, that I will be putting links to resources on Palestine down below. The genocide that's currently happening in Gaza and Palestine is not over, even though that's kind of what the government wants you to think. And I would just love to encourage you to do some of your own research and to donate to the people that need help in Gaza, need help evacuating. I will put some GoFundMes and some links down below if you would like to look into that. If you've been around for a while, you might remember I did a video like this a couple years ago, and it's actually the only video I've ever privated. So I guess technically this is my 51st video. But so this was like 2 years ago that I made a top 10 of all time video, and I just do not stand by it at all. There were some authors like Stephen King and Neil Gaiman on there who I am just not really vocally supporting anymore, or supporting at all in terms of Neil Gaiman, unfortunately. But if you are interested in hearing more about that and books that I don't fuck with really anymore, I actually have a video that is 5-star ratings I regret. So if you want to hear me talk shit about some authors, go check it out. But yeah, so that was a few years ago. My tastes have definitely changed since then. I've changed so much as a person since then. And so I'm not expecting these top 10 books to stay the same forever, but I'm definitely going to like this video a little more than my last one. It was kind of just thrown together, and a lot of those books are not top 10 reads for me anymore. So I wanted to just meet with you guys today, talk to you about my updated list of top 10 books of all time, and they probably will change in the future, so maybe I'll make another video in a couple years updating you, but I'm feeling pretty confident about this array of books, and I hope you guys feel good about it too. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Let me know down below if you've read any of these, what you think, if you have any recommendations for me based off them. I am super open to that. But yeah, let's just get into it. This is in no particular order. Let's do it. First up is Michelle Zauner's Crying in H Mart. I love this book so much. I have multiple signed copies. I think I have 3 signed copies at this point. It just kind of happened that way. For my birthday last year, my girlfriend and I actually went to a reading event where Michelle read a section of the book and did like a Q&A. And that was just so wonderful. And I didn't get to meet her, which is fine, but I did get to see her in person, and that was just so cool. So Kate and I we each got a book with our tickets, and then I also had previously gotten a signed book and personalized edition. I don't know where it is. It's in my house somewhere, but I do have one of the signed editions. Anyways, that's how obviously you can tell this book is pretty important to me. This is probably my favorite memoir. I mean, it is my favorite memoir. It follows Michelle Zauner, who, if you don't know, is the lead singer of the band Japanese Breakfast, as she nurses her mom through her last few months of life with terminal cancer. And then, and she had a very complicated relationship with her mom throughout her life. She was very overbearing. And then after her mom passes, the rest of the book kind of follows her grief journey and how it intertwines with food, which is such a huge part of the book. How Michelle connects to her dead mother is through food and their shared Korean culture. And it is just such a beautiful book, and I am a huge lover of food and culture, and it is just like, it brings everything together in such a beautiful way. And as somebody who has, not super recently, but in the past few years, really gone through heavy grief for the first time, this book was really relatable and inspirational in a way, and just told so well. And I just cannot wait to see what Michelle Zauner comes out with next, because Japanese Breakfast is one of my favorite bands, and she has quickly become one of my favorite authors. Next up is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. It is no secret that I am a big Stephen Graham Jones fan. And if people ask me for a horror recommendation and they're kind of new to the genre, this is usually the first thing that I'll throw out to them. This book isn't for everybody because Stephen Graham Jones's writing style is a little funky, but it's such a good time. This follows a group of men who go on an elk hunting trip on their tribal elders' ground, and something goes terribly wrong, and years later they're all still haunted by it. And at its core, this is a revenge story. It is very brutal and gory at times, but also very heartfelt in a strange way, and there's so many funny moments. And just this, I think this was Stephen Graham Jones' first big book, even though he had been writing for a long time. And I think this just exemplifies him as an author so perfectly. There's so much wit to him and his writing, and I love this book. It is so good and creepy and eerie and gothic. Had to go really quick and put on some sunscreen because this is it's a little hot out. Next, this book is probably not a surprise to anybody as I talked about it so much last year, but that is Julia Armfield's Our Wives Under the Sea. If you had to ask me to write out my perfect book on paper, it would be this. It is a lesbian love story, dripping with grief and sadness and melancholy, and it is also an ocean horror and a cosmic horror, and just has absolutely beautiful writing that all come together to make one of my favorite books ever. I read this last year and it quickly just shot up to the top of the list of my favorite books. It is a gothic novel of sorts. It calls the sea itself, here I wrote this down, a haunted house, calling it a place in which things that ought not to exist move about in the darkness. If you can't tell, I love a gothic story. That's going to come up a few other times throughout this. The book follows a couple, Leah and Miri, as they try to cope with a traumatic event that Leah has been through. She was on a deep sea submarine expedition, and the submarine got stuck at the bottom of the ocean for 6 months when the expedition was only supposed to last a few days. We follow them as Leah just drifts further and further from Miri, and eventually we figure out what happened to her when she was down in the depths of the ocean. And it is just so eerie and creepy and sad and just perfect. And it is such a good metaphor for losing somebody, of course. And I just adore this book. It's so funny because I find that I don't have so much to say about books that I love. So videos like this can be kind of hard for me because I don't know what to say besides like, this was perfect. And that's kind of how I feel about Our Wives Under the Sea, where it's just like, I can tell you a little bit what it's about, but honestly, it's best if you go into it blind. I know some people didn't love it because it's a slow burn, but I just think you gotta let the writing wash over you, literally. It feels just so, this is just such a beautiful book, and my wonderful girlfriend got me this beautiful edition from the UK that's just nice and pink, and yeah, this is one of my favorites, and I think it'll stay there for a while. I actually just started Julia Armfield's newest book, Private Rights, last night, and I am so excited about that. It doesn't come out in the US until December, but I ordered a copy of it from the UK, so I cheated a little bit. but I am so excited to dig into it a little more. I was stuck in between a few books by Alison Bechdel, who has quickly become one of my favorite authors. It was in between Dykes to Watch Out For and Fun Home, but I decided to go with Dykes to Watch Out For, even though it is technically a collection of comic strips and not exactly a book. But I read it over the course of a few days as a book, so I'm counting it as that here. It won over Fun Home for me just because of the cultural impact of it and the impact it had on me. If you haven't read it before, you absolutely have to. You can buy it bound as a collection of comic strips, but you can also go onto Alison Bechdel's website and find the entire strip from the 80s to the 2000s for free. So there's no excuse, especially if you're a lesbian, you gotta read this. It follows this big, messy lesbian friend group, mostly lesbians, from the 80s to the 2000s. The comic strip ran from that time, and they're living in some unnamed big town, which is based off Minneapolis. And it starts with most of these friends working at a women's bookstore, and we just follow them as they go through these like 30 years of their lives. And so you get to know these characters so well. You follow them through grief and gender experimentation and gentrification, the world around them changing. And even though obviously I was not alive in the 80s, it is so easy to relate to these characters, especially as a lesbian. And I came to this book at a really hard, lonely time in my life, and I just needed it so badly. I like found community within this book. And it's really inspired me in my current life to be more active in my queer community around me. It also just handles the past and present problematic aspects of the lesbian community, like transphobia, for example, so well. Bechdel like leads the characters through these situations and shows them the right way, and she's always pretty much on the right side of history in this strip, which I just really appreciate, and it just handles it so well. It's not that we never see her characters fuck up or be fucked up, but the way that she kind of quietly shows the reader that this is the wrong way to think, I think is just so great. It's also super diverse, racially and in terms of ability. There are some disabled main characters, which I really appreciate. And all in all, if you can't tell, I love this comic strip. Next, I want to talk about The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. Once again, another gothic story collection on here. I just love a gothic vibe. This is just so wonderful. This like came before the trend of feminist fairy tale retellings, which I, to be honest, feel is a little overplayed these days. But this was written, I mean, this is the 75th anniversary? That's crazy. I didn't realize it was written that long ago. Well, I guess so. So this was written quite a while ago, and I just think it is the feminist fairy tale retelling done perfectly. Angela Carter's writing is just so beautiful and very purple prosy, so if that's not your vibe, skip it. But it is my vibe, and it's just done so well here. And the stories that she chooses to retell are so great. The title story, The Bloody Chamber, is a retelling of Bluebeard, which is definitely one of my favorite kind of like fairy tale fables. There's quite a few Little Red Riding Hood retellings in here. There's a beautiful, just wonderful gothic original vampire story in here that I actually did a close reading of for an assignment in school once, and just totally marked it up, and I enjoyed that so much. And yeah, so I don't have too much to say about this one besides it is just absolutely beautiful writing. Yeah, I love this book. I'm probably going to reread it every winter until I die. They are just so dark and sensual and sexy and so gothic, and I just love this collection. And her writing actually reminds me a lot of the next author that we are going to talk about. Perfect segue. Shirley Jackson. Everybody knows that I love Shirley Jackson, right? We all know that at this point. It was really hard for me to just choose one of Shirley Jackson's books. I was really in between this and We Have Always Lived in the Castle, because they're both kind of on the same level for me, but I had to just go and choose The Haunting of Hill House, because how can you not? This follows Eleanor, a mentally unstable woman that gets invited for a stay at Hill House, which is a notoriously haunted house. And because of that, a doctor is trying to do a study of sorts to prove that the paranormal exists in this house. And he's doing that through contacting people who have had paranormal experiences at some other point in their life and inviting them to the house. So Eleanor and a few other people get invited, and things just kind of unravel from there. Some people don't like this book. I feel like I'm saying that quite a lot here in this video, but some people don't like this book because it's slow and they expect the Mike Flanagan show, Haunting of Hill House, and that's just not what it is, and that's okay. You just have to have different expectations. They have similar themes, but they are very different pieces of media. And you know, The Haunting of Hill House was written when quite a while, in 1959. It was written in you know, in the 50s. It's not going to give you everything you're expecting from a modern horror, but this is a classic for a reason. It is so eerie and unsettling, and there are just some extremely well-crafted moments of horror here, and it helps because of the slowness and the quietness that surrounds it, that when those moments happen, they are so impactful. I love a story with a mentally unstable woman and her life unraveling around her, and this is one of the best versions of that, in my opinion. I love this book. Once again, I think I'm going to reread this every year until I die. There's also definitely some queer subtext in here, which I can't help but love. This book is just perfect for, you know, fall is coming up soon, a good, nice, cozy fall night in, under a blanket with all the lights turned off. You should pick this up. It's wonderful. Annihilation was actually on the list for the last video I made, so it made the cut. This will just probably forever be one of my favorite books. If I had to pick, like, this would be in the top 3 for sure, even though I don't really want to put them in places like that in this video. But this is just kind of similar to Our Wives Under the Sea, where it's like, if you asked me to write out my perfect book on paper, this would be it. I absolutely adore this book. It is so eerie and dreamlike and so creepy. This is one of the only books that has like genuinely scared me. It follows an expedition of 4 women that are going into Area X, and Area X this is kind of like not like a dystopian. The rest of the world besides Area X is very similar to our current world, but Area X is a coastal seaside town based off of Florida, I think, that had to be quartered off because of some weird, strange phenomena that had been occurring. And this caused the plants and animals to mutate. The earth is kind of taking itself back in this area. And they've sent this is the 12th expedition that the government has sent into Area X, and the other 11 have come back in bad shape, if they've come back at all. There have been mass suicides or people turning on each other and killing each other. And the 11th expedition came back. They all came back fine, but then quickly all died of cancer. So this is a scary place. It's an anomaly. They don't know the government doesn't know what to do with it, and so they just keep sending these expeditions. And so we're following the 12th expedition. They're trying to go in and map the area, get samples, see if they can figure out what's been going on, and to hopefully not meet the same fate as the past expeditions. There's a segment of the book that takes place in this like underground staircase tunnel that they call the Tower, where something is lurking at the bottom of the tower. It's one of the most unsettling things I have read in recent memory. That part of the story specifically is like one of the only passages of a book that has like genuinely left me feeling so creeped out. And I'll say it again, this book is not for everybody. Some people don't like it because the writing can be a little dense and confusing, but I ask you to just try, apply yourself, get past the confusion a little bit, immerse yourself in the world, and you're gonna fuck with it. It's so good. The setting is just so lush and beautiful, but haunting and scary and unknowable. And it's just like, it's eco-horror, seaside horror, and it's cosmic horror, which are three of my favorite things put together. So, cannot recommend this one enough. I know it's not some people's thing, but it's my thing. And I love this book, and I think it'll be in my top 10 forever. This feels a little bold to put into my top 10 because it was such a recent read for me, but this is just one of those life-changing books, and that is Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg. A lot of people have not read this book. It has been out of print for a long time, but I actually did find it for sale at cost online, so if anybody's interested, I will link it down below. This is kind of a semi-autobiographical book from Leslie Feinberg. The main character's name is Jess, and we follow her growing up as a young butch in the 50s and 60s, pre-Stonewall, living in the gay bars of her town. It's easy to forget that, like, even though things are hard as a queer trans person these days, that they were a lot harder only like 50 years ago. And this book was a little bit of a reality check for me in that way. It can be a really, really hard read at times, but that's because it was really hard to be a queer person at that time in America. And so we follow Jess through some really traumatizing things like assault and going through police raids at her local gay bars. And it can be really rough, but it's important to recognize that as our queer history. There is a lot of hope here, though, as we follow Jess through further discovering their identity and finding community and going through love and loss and gender exploration. And it just touched me a lot as a queer trans person who definitely kind of identifies in that butch dyke spectrum. And I just loved this book. It was so impactful for me when I read it a couple months ago. I think about it almost every day since. If you haven't read it and you are a lesbian or a trans person, I would really recommend this one. It is just so wonderful. You can actually find the whole manuscript online for free, and you can buy it at cost, which I'll link down below. It is just a queer, trans, working class, butch dyke classic. And I can't recommend it enough if you identify as any of those things. I really want to read more from Leslie Feinberg and her partner, Minnie Bruce Pratt, but a lot of both of their works are out of print. So if you guys know anywhere to find those, drop it down below. Please let me know, because this was probably my favorite book of the year. I'm not going to speak too soon, but that's what it's looking like. And I just felt it was so impactful, and I think it's one of those books that everybody should read, even though it sucks that it's out of print. What can you do? So our last two picks are very fun, nostalgic picks from my childhood that I had to pick, because this is top 10 books of all time for me, right? And we got to get a little sentimental. It's not about the best books that I've read sometimes, it's about the ones that mean the most to me. And so here we have The Thief of Always by Clive Barker, which is kind of a niche pick. I feel like a lot of people don't know this one, but I really love this book. It is kind of, I don't know, it was just such an important book to me when I was growing up. I am a huge middle grade lover, and it definitely started in this era of my life when I was meant to be reading middle grade. I got this book from my like weird artsy neighbor when I was in like 5th grade. And I remember reading it, just being like, should I be reading this? Am I allowed to read this? And that's exactly what I want from my middle grade. And it was then, it is now. And it kind of follows a Coraline-esque story The reason Coraline didn't make it onto this list or any other Neil Gaiman books is because of his recent gross allegations, and I am not really wanting to support that guy anymore. Thankfully, Clive Barker is unproblematic king, and I love The Thief of Always just as much as I did Coraline when I was a kid. But it follows a similar plot line where we're following this kid named Harvey who is just tired of his boring life, you know, all of that. And he gets promised something extraordinary, an extraordinary life from these sinister creatures, where it's Christmas every day and everything is perfect and you get to live in this big house and be taken care of. But of course, that's not how the world works. And that, you know, he gets more than he bargained for. And I adored this book so much when I was a kid. The illustrations were done by Clive Barker and are just so fucking creepy and really impacted me. And I'll throw a couple up here. But yeah, this was just such a special book to me when I was younger. And I feel like I just had to mention it here. I reread it a couple years ago and loved it just as much. I lent it to somebody and I've lost it since, but I think I need to repurchase it and do a reread soon, because this was just such a special book for me at that time in my life too, because I was feeling kind of similar to the main character, and yeah, it had a lot of impact for me. And then last but not least, we have kind of a goofy pick, but I could not ignore this. It was a toss-up between this and my favorite Goosebumps book, The Haunted Mask. We all know how much I love Goosebumps, but let's be real, they're not that good. And I picked Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark because I believe it is just better. There's actually a Scary Stories treasury, which has all 3 books collected in one. I'm not fucking around here. I love these books. I love these illustrations. If you've never read these, you gotta. They're fun, they're creepy. These illustrations are next level, and they scared me and enthralled me so much when I was growing up. I still like even like flipping through this creeps me out still, honestly. Like the story The Thing, that picture haunted me so much as a child. All of the little songs in here are so funny and silly. But the one that scared me the most, let me find it, was High Beams. Oh, I still think about this when I'm driving like all the time. And there's a couple stories in here that still do that. Of course, The Babysitter. I loved these when I was a kid. They were probably one of the first creepy things that I had an experience with, and I just adored these. I read them constantly. I had this treasury when I was a kid, and then I went, I think I got rid of it at some point, and I went and repurchased it last year. And it was such a good purchase because I can just reread these forever, and they are still just as creepy as they were when I was a kid. And they just have such a special place in my heart for that little weird child that I was. And yeah, it just felt like, how could I make this video without including a few books that honor my roots? And this definitely does that. If you haven't picked these up before, once it gets closer to fall, a little colder, a little spookier, you gotta read these. They're so fun. So yeah, that is everything I have. This is my 50th video, celebrating 1,000 subscribers, and I still cannot believe it. And I just want to say again how grateful I feel for everybody that has been with me, even if you're not subscribed, even if you're just watching for the first time. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope the lighting was okay. I hope the background noise wasn't too bad. I just like filming outside. It's fun. Thanks so much for watching, y'all. I really, really appreciate you. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe down below. Feel free to leave me a comment and let me know what you thought about any of these picks. Let me know some of your favorite books. I would love to hear. I love having discussions with you guys in the comments. And once again, thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. I feel incredibly grateful that 1,000 people want to listen to me chat about books. And I have a couple other fun videos planned in the next few weeks to celebrate this 1,000 subscriber milestone. So stay tuned for that. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye.